The knife finds its mark, not with a roar, but with a whisper, a betrayal so quiet it might have been mistaken for loyalty if not for the blood pooling beneath him. In his final moments, he looks up at the face of the man who once called him brother. His voice falters, just 2 words escaping his lips, "Et tu, brute?" And then silence. The world doesn't end in that moment, it shatters. This is where we begin, not with the rise of empires or the fall of kings, but with the fragile threads of trust unraveling under the weight of ambition. This story comes from Julius Caesar, written by William Shakespeare, but this isn't about Rome. It's about us, the masks we wear, the lies we tell ourselves, and the knives we don't see coming until it's too late. Imagine standing on the edge of something great. You can feel it in your bones, the hum of possibility, the pull of destiny. That's where Caesar stood, towering over a city that both worshipped and feared him. To some, he was a savior, to others, a tyrant waiting to be crowned. But here's the thing about power, it doesn't care what you think you are. It only cares what you become. And Caesar, for all his brilliance, couldn't see how his shadow had grown darker than his light. His downfall wasn't plotted by enemies hiding in alleys. It came from within his inner circle. From men who smiled at his table, shared his bread, and whispered promises they never intended to keep. Men like Brutus. Brutus was different. He wasn't driven by greed or envy. No, his betrayal was born of something far more dangerous: conviction. He believed, truly believed, that killing Caesar wasn't an act of cruelty, but one of mercy. For Rome, for freedom, for honor. But good intentions have a way of curdling when mixed with pride and fear. Do you know what happens when someone convinces themselves they're doing the right thing? They stop asking questions. They silence their doubts, ignore the warnings, and march forward as if blindfolded, trusting the path will lead where they hope. That's exactly what Brutus did. And Cassius, oh, Cassius. He knew how to play the tune of righteousness better than anyone. With honeyed words and poisoned logic, he painted Caesar as a serpent about to strike, while Brutus nodded along, eager to believe. But let's pause for a moment. Let's step into Brutus' mind, because that's where the real tragedy unfolds. Have you ever lain awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you're making the right choice? If the cost of doing nothing outweighs the risk of acting? Brutus wrestled with those thoughts every second leading up to the assassination. His wife, Portia, saw the torment etched into his face. She begged him to share his burden, to let her carry some of the weight. "You are sick," she said, her voice trembling with desperation. "If this sorrow were mine, I would tear open my chest to show you." But Brutus stayed silent. Because silence feels safer, doesn't it? Until it becomes a prison. On the morning of the Ides of March, the conspirators gathered like shadows converging on a flame. Each carried a dagger, each wore a mask of resolve. But beneath those masks lay cracks filled with doubt, guilt, and fear. When Caesar walked into the Senate chamber, he didn't see danger. He saw friends, trusted allies. How could he have known? How could anyone prepare for the moment when trust turns to ash? The first blow fell, then another, until the room was chaos. Blood splattered the walls, dripped from hands that trembled despite their owners' best efforts to appear resolute. Through it all, Caesar locked eyes with Brutus. There was no rage in that gaze, only disbelief. A question without words. Why? And in that instant, Brutus flinched, not outwardly, but deep inside, where truth lives unfiltered. Because even he couldn't answer. Afterward, the conspirators stood amidst the wreckage, expecting cheers, expecting gratitude. Instead, they got silence. Then Mark Antony arrived, holding Caesar's body aloft like a banner. His voice rose above the crowd, soft at first, then sharp as a blade. "Friends, Romans, countrymen," he began, weaving a spell of grief and fury. By the time he finished, the mob was ablaze with vengeance. What the assassins thought would save Rome had torn it apart instead. And Brutus? He watched it all unravel, piece by piece. The republic he fought for slipped further away with each passing day, replaced by chaos and division. On the battlefield, surrounded by enemies, he chose to take his own life rather than face capture. As he knelt beside Cassius' corpse, his final words echoed hollowly, "I killed not thee with half so good a will." What if you're not Caesar, but Brutus? What if the greatest threat to your ideals isn't someone else, it's you? Would you recognize the warning signs before it's too late? Or would you stay silent, convincing yourself you're doing the right thing until there's nothing left to save? The door creaks open, and for a moment, Winston thinks it might be nothing. A neighbor, perhaps, or the landlord checking on his tenants. But then he sees them, the black uniforms, the cold eyes, the insignia of the thought police glaring back at him like a brand. His stomach drops. He doesn't need to hear their voices to know why they're here. Julia tries to run, but there's nowhere to go. The room is small, claustrophobic, its walls closing in around them like a trap snapping shut. One of the officers grabs her by the arm, twisting it behind her back until she cries out. Winston wants to fight, to do something, but his body betrays him. It's as if all the rebellion that once burned inside him has been extinguished in an instant, leaving only ash. They drag them away separately, and that's the last time Winston sees her. The cells are dark, damp, and suffocating. Winston sits hunched against the wall, his hands trembling again, not from fear this time, but from withdrawal. The absence of Julia feels like a physical wound, raw and gaping. He wonders if she's thinking about him too. If she's still holding on to whatever hope they shared, however fragile it was. Then comes the waiting. Hours stretch into days, each one blending into the next until time itself seems to dissolve. There's no clock in the cell, no window to mark the passage of light. Only the sound of dripping water somewhere in the distance, counting off seconds that feel like eternities. Eventually, they come for him. Room 101. That's what they call it. Not a name, exactly, but a designation. A number stripped of meaning, designed to erase any sense of identity or individuality. When Winston hears those words spoken aloud, something deep within him recoils. He knows what happens in room 101. Everyone does, even if no one speaks of it openly. It's where they take you when they've broken everything else. When the door opens, Winston braces himself for pain, for whips, for fire, for anything they can use to tear him apart. But instead, he sees a cage. Inside it something moves. Something small and scurrying. Rats. His breath catches in his throat. Not this. Anything but this. One of the guards lifts the cage, bringing it closer to his face. "You're going to tell us everything," the man says calmly, almost kindly. "And when you do, we'll let you go." Winston shakes his head, tears streaming down his face. "No," he whispers. "Please." But they don't stop. They never stop. Later, how much later, he can't say. He sits in another cell, staring at his own reflection in a puddle of water on the floor. His face looks unfamiliar, distorted by exhaustion and despair. He can still feel the rat's teeth gnawing at his mind, their claws scraping against the edges of his sanity. What did he say? What didn't he say? The memories blur together, fragments of confession mixing with moments of silence. All he knows for sure is that he gave in. In the end, everyone gives in. And then the strangest thing happens. They release him. At first, Winston can't believe it. He walks through the streets like a ghost, half expecting someone to grab him, to drag him back to the cells. But no one does. The city feels different now, or maybe it's just him. The gray buildings seem darker, the slogans louder. Even the air tastes heavier, thick with the weight of betrayal. He finds Julia again. Somehow, they both survive. They meet in the same square where they used to exchange furtive glances, their secret rebellion reduced to awkward silence. She looks thinner, older, her fiery hair dulled by time and torture. Neither of them speaks for a long time. Finally, she breaks the quiet. "They got me too," she says softly. Her voice is flat, devoid of emotion. "I told them everything." "I know," Winston replies. And he does. He sees it in her eyes, the same emptiness that mirrors his own. Neither of them mentions love. Neither of them mentions resistance. Those words belong to another life, one that feels impossibly distant now. Instead, they sit together for a while, strangers bound by shared suffering, before parting ways without saying goodbye. Back in his apartment, Winston stares at the telescreen, its unblinking gaze fixed on him like always. The news drones on about victories and triumphs, about enemies defeated and loyalty rewarded. None of it matters anymore. He knows the truth now, or rather, he knows the lie. Truth isn't something you find, it's something you create or destroy. On the screen, Big Brother smiles down at him, benevolent and eternal. For the first time, Winston feels calm. Not happy, not free, but calm. He raises his glass in a silent toast, mouthing the words he spent his entire life resisting. 2 + 2 = 5. As the screen watches, Winston feels the last vestiges of himself slip away. The rebellion fades, the defiance crumbles, and all that remains is obedience. Somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark flickers and dies. This is how truth dies, not with violence, not with force, but with silence. With surrender. With the slow erosion of hope until nothing is left but the hollow echo of obedience. Feel like you're meant for more, but don't know how to get there? You're not alone. Every success story starts with doubt and a spark. The Self-Made Millionaire, Zero to Wealth isn't just a book. It's your roadmap to purpose, confidence, and success, built on real lessons from real millionaires. One reader said, "It didn't feel like a book. It felt like my future talking to me." Inside, you'll find the exact mindset and principles used by the world's most successful people. No fluff, just real, life-changing wisdom. Ready to take the first step? Get it 100% free. Just subscribe and comment "book" below.